Okay, it's just gone 6 p.m. on my side, so we are going to begin this evening's class. Welcome to it. Hope you're doing well. This is going to be the last class we do for Learning Unit 3, which is centered on the movie Tsotsi and the role that place plays in this film, as well as how various technical filmic elements are deployed in order to exaggerate the feelings of place or bring them out in the movie and tie in with the larger themes the film was trying to communicate to us. As part of that, I asked you to do an ice task based on the praying on the weak scene we see in Tsotsi, which is about a 6 or 7 minute sequence in which we see um, the character of Tsotsi, the main character, hunt and track down and then prey on a beggar whose name I think is Morris in the story. There's never mentioned, but in the credits, I think he's called Morris. And from about minute 21 in this film, you can watch that sequence unfold. What you might have noticed in there was a few telling elements. One to do with place, or as you would say in a technical way, mise en scène. Um, Basically just means the setting, but the place where a scene occurs. You will notice that it was, for one thing, happening at night. On the other hand, it's happening somewhere very sort of dark, dingy. It's urban, somewhere in Johannesburg. It's big, but it's also empty. It's broken down, it's grimy, it's very rubbly. But when I watch it, I often can't tell if it's done above ground or underground, whether it's being filmed um, at kind of what time. Is it in the evening or is it late at night? So it's sort of like they have a setting where the world kind of falls away and you're just left with these two characters who face off against each other. One who's very strong and one who's very weak. And that was one of the themes that I was trying to draw out of you in the ice task, was to look at how feelings of weakness and strength are created using various camera angles. One way he does it is that he will shoot the scene kind of at a long from a long distance. So you'd have like a long shot. You'd have both of these characters in a frame, backgrounded with this kind of grimy urban landscape. Tsotsi is on his feet. He looks strong. He looks powerful, masculine, macho, young, lithe. Where the beggar, of course, is a bit of a comical character because he's in this makeshift wheelchair that he's created for himself. He's slow, he's cumbersome, and he's old. And the director Hood will put each of them on different ends of the camera shot. So it looks like they are two ends of the spectrum, two binaries, opposites, playing off against each other. And the whole thing leads you to think that what we're going to see in this scene is Tsotsi bully this man, maybe beat him up, throw him out of his chair, steal all of his things, maybe even kill him. It's still pretty early in the film, and we haven't seen yet really like the good side to Tsotsi. And in the scene, we are in a in a bit of suspense as an audience because we don't know what's going to happen here. We don't know what's going on. And when I lecture this, I often tell students that if you just watch this scene alone, um, it kind of stands by itself as a short film in a way. And it's not longer than 10 minutes. It's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's kind of character development through the scene, and it's coherent. You can just watch this and get a good sense of these people, of their situation, and of the society that they live in and the problems that they face. Of course, there's the rest of the movie to follow, which makes the scene richer, but it does stand by itself as being a kind of complete film. And it has that feeling because the writer, the director are using a lot of technical skill to situate you, the audience, in this scene. And we are kind of thrown between these two characters a little bit. One is a good guy, Morris, the other Tsotsi is a bad guy. But what happens over the course of the sequence is this character development, this arc of change, actually, that then sets off a different character of Tsotsi to exist throughout the rest of the film, which is that Tsotsi actually, in the scene, he doesn't do the bad thing. He's not a bad guy. Actually, what he does instead of bullying Morris is he doesn't help him. He doesn't suddenly give him stuff. He actually kicks his money away and threatens him menacingly with a gun, which he takes out. And so he's kind of torturing Morris a little bit, but then it shifts and he starts to do something interesting, which is just to ask him questions about his life. Now, when you watch the film, Morris actually appears, I think, 3 different times in this scene, but also one before and later on towards the end of the film. And he sits kind of stationed at the top of some stairs at the train station, and he's just routinely ignored by everybody who comes up and down the stairs through the train station. They have other things to do, don't they? They have trains to catch, they have jobs to get to, families to get back home to, and so on. And Morris is just a marginal figure in the film, but in society as well. He's a character, but he's ignored. His role is to be looked past and forgotten. And what Tsotsi does that's so interesting is that he's the only character in the whole world of the film who stops and asks him questions, who pays him attention. To ask somebody a question to show is also to show interest. And to be interested in another person is to have some degree of curiosity and empathy, to feel pity for them, to be interested in their lives. And that's what the scene becomes. It's not an interrogation, but rather Tsotsi just asking Morris questions about his life. Why? What happened to him? Why does he carry on? What gives him hope? These are very deep, important, big questions, philosophical questions. And Morris answers them, right? And gives him just a few words of explanation into what the point of his life is, what's happened to him. And that humanizes Morris, right? Just answering those questions humanizes him, makes him more of a person than he appears to be in the film. But it also humanizes Tsotsi because it teaches Tsotsi about somebody else. And it also humanizes Tsotsi in our eyes. So this guy is not actually a psychopath. A psychopath would be somebody who feels nothing, who's not able to be interested in other people. So here we have a glimpse into Tsotsi's character, that he's not all bad. He does bad things. He probably doesn't know how to do good things. Actually, he's never had good things happen to him. Nobody's shows him in any love or interest. Everybody's afraid of him, or when he was a kid, was very brutal towards him. But he does have a capacity for goodness, a glimmer anyway. And that's the whole point of this film too, is I mentioned it before, but he's not all bad, he's not all good, he's somewhere in between. This is not all dark, it's not all light, it's shades of gray. And when you look at the film, a lot of the film is actually shot like that in its lighting. It's like a gray color. There's light and there's dark being put together. There's strength and weakness being put together. And that links back to this idea of power in the scene. Tsotsi has power over Morris, but the irony is that both of these characters are actually, relative to society, they are both powerless. They actually don't have that much power. Even though one might have power over the other, relative to the rest of the world, they're actually relatively weak people. And that's the kind of unsaid thing about the film, that for all of Tsotsi's strengths, he's actually, in the grander scheme of things, he's really just a child himself, right? And we see this theme of children getting picked up then later on in the movie too. Around about minute 44, we have a scene in which Tsotsi returns to, not really, maybe not his birthplace, but a place where he ran away from and then had to grow up himself, had to grow up by himself. right? This is the scene where he actually takes David, the little baby, with him to these like pipes, and he sorry, I just got a bit of a thing going on here, just with the connection. I had to fix something out. Just bear with me quickly, please. Okay, so he goes to the scene of his kind of childhood. It's very important because it's where he lived when he was a homeless child. And he shows David kind of these pipes, and he sees all these other homeless children who are now living there as well. And it's a very sad scene. I think those children in that shot are probably actually real street children. I'm not too sure. I don't think they're actors or anything. I think they actually might have been real kids who lived on the street. So it sort of adds a level of sadness and poignancy to the whole thing. Um, and he kind of banters and talks to the kids. And again, it's this humanizing thing of Tsotsi. We as the audience get to see something about his childhood, which is explanatory because it shows where he comes from, why he is the way he is. But also, again, he's kind of being like a parent. This is something a parent would do. Would take a child back to show him their old house. And he's also kind of parenting these street kids. He's talking to them, he's being nice with them. And after that, he gives the child a name, which is David. So he's becoming, in a sense, a parent, right? And that's another, just to go back to the slide, it's another place in the movie that's very kind of evocative and powerful. We've got this subterranean kind of night scene with Tsotsi facing off against Morris. Later on, we've got this open day scene with the pipes, the dust, the poverty, the feeling of just emptiness, hopelessness, but a little bit of humanity carrying on nonetheless. These are the different places in the movie that are very evocative and which create a mood or a feeling, but also advance the story and advance our understanding of the characters. There's another evocative place too, which is about an hour and a minute in, when Tsotsi uh, goes back the door. He goes back to this. Sorry, I'm just having some technical things going on, but it's okay. Tsotsi goes to this very particular place in Johannesburg. This is what it looks like, just to give you an image of it. It's about an hour and a minute, an hour and 13 minutes in. And there are things here that are interesting again. Again, it's a cool kind of place. I'm going to actually show you how this links to the beginning of the film. But there's things you can notice about it, like the music and how Johannesburg here is actually getting now more fully portrayed in the film, right? So up until this point, I guess you could say the movies almost could be set in nearly any South African city, because it takes place in a lot of kind of nondescript, unnamed, unknown places around Johannesburg, places you might not know if you didn't come from there. But now towards the end, Johannesburg is shown more fully as itself, just like Tsotsi's becoming a more fully realized character as well. And this is the hits. This part of the film begins the end of the story, where Tsotsi kind of resolves to take David back, to do the right thing, and to set the world back in balance. I mean, this isn't and it happens again linked to a place, right? This particular place of Johannesburg is interesting because it's on a hill overlooking a famous suburb, or maybe even infamous suburb of Johannesburg called Hillbrow. Very urban, sort of known for high crime levels, lots of foreign African nationals live there. But it's also part of a like in the background here, we see the concrete jungle of of Johannesburg itself. We've got the Ponte Tower on the left here with the Vodacom thing on the top. Then we've got the actual now Vodacom Tower there in the middle. And you can see just in this frame how the director Hood is so deliberately using this image to translate a mood to us. You should also hear the music being played over the top of it, which is this gospel music, so it's religious. Bottom right-hand corner, we have some religious people gathering for a service. Tsotsi's wearing white, so is the baby, and that kind of also is quite a religious-looking posture that he's in. Adult holding a baby, okay, kind of like a Madonna from Christianity. So we've got very religious overtones here. These also look a bit like a cross almost in the background, half a cross anyway. So we've got this religious theme coming through with the music, the imagery, and that should communicate to you also that Tsotsi's undergoing some sort of a spiritual change, that he's resurrecting, to use another Christian theme. He's turning into something else, like the old Tsotsi's dying and a new one is being born. And that's also like the fuller realization of the place in the film is part of that, but it helps to bring it along. Also, just look at the like something technical about the film. He's in this big long shot here, or a wide, what you call a master shot. A master shot is when you have a full scene trying to be rendered. So you have characters in a place and you're trying to get as much about the place in as possible. Think back to the very first scene in the film where Tsotsi is, and I went over this a couple of weeks ago, where Tsotsi's in the background, he's looking out his door, his friend's in the foreground, and I said to you, it kind of creates a very nice triangle. So the triangle gives a sense of solidity to the scene, and the positioning of everybody in it begins to tell you something about the story, something about their character. Same thing stands here. We've got Tsotsi at the top of the Vodacom Tower. We've got the people on the right-hand side in the background. And that again forms quite a nice triangle across the scene. So we've got this very classical composition, then with the heavier, larger Ponte Tower on the left. Everything is in balance when you look at it. It's a very balanced scene with the skyscrapers in the back, the big blue sky, blending into the evening, the soft colors, the darker colors, the heavy foreground. It's a very balanced shot. And what the director is almost communicating to us here, using this imagery of place, is that there is now a new balance in the film as well, right? So the beginning, the status quo was Tsotsi, this mysterious figure without a shirt, staring out into the red, threatening evening. The end of the film, we've got Tsotsi in a white shirt, so he's changed his clothes. Whenever you change your clothes, you change your character as well, maybe. And there's a new status quo, which is that Tsotsi is no longer that mysterious thug who's not understandable to us. He's actually a fully realized character who's changed, who's developed, who showed his humanity, his ability to care and love and look after other people and show an interest in the world around him, and who understands actually that there is right and wrong in the world, and he's choosing the side of right. He's making a moral choice. And so the music, the religious music, the religious imagery, the religious ceremony here in the right-hand corner, all of that evokes the sense of morality, of knowing what is good, knowing what is evil, and being able to choose a side. And that is the new balance in this film. So it's moving into a, he's literally completely turned himself around, done a 180, and he's a whole different person, right? So just looking at how a single shot can unconsciously communicate these ideas to you, these themes, and communicate really what the meaning of the film is. It doesn't have to say it directly. There doesn't have to be a lecture or a label on it telling you what to think, but it does so almost like subliminally, using all of these techniques, putting them together, character, camera choice, camera angle, music, composition of the scene, the mise en scène, all of these things combine to tell you at an emotional level, at a visual level too, uh, what's going on, what to think, what your options are as you try and navigate the meaning of the film. And in breaking it down like that, you can work backwards and see how all of these elements are carefully chosen and put together in a very calculated way, deliberate, conscious way to produce a certain effect. It's not just, they don't just put the camera anywhere, tell people to stand in front of it and say, go. The whole thing is very choreographed and consciously put together. And like I said, it all ties back to the meaning. It's also the power of the place. Using a place in order to capture the change the character's undergoing, right? So sticking to the theme of the module, I think that's a great way to look at things. Now let's go into the end of the film, which is also very evocative. At the end of the film, Tsotsi takes the baby back, and everything converges here. So we see Tsotsi, the baby, the parents, and the cops. They all come together in the same scene. So the whole movie goes towards this conclusion where all the main actors, all the main agents in the film are put together in one sequence, one scene, even one shot. And in doing so, the movie will resolve in a certain way. The way it resolves, it Tsotsi gives the baby back. And by the time when he does, I think this is very, very telling. So when he hands the baby back over, we see a close up on his face, and he's really just sobbing, crying hard, very emotional. I think back to that, the beginning of the film again, where we see Tsotsi's face in the same close up, but it's very hard. It's very indifferent. It's very apathetic. And it's very cruel, also masculine and macho, you know. Again, at the beginning, he's wearing a red shirt, leather jacket. At the end, he's wearing a white shirt, which is the kind of symbolic of purity, but also a fresh start, a new beginning of things. A bride will wear white because it's a new thing that's happening. It's a fresh beginning. His eyes in the beginning of the film, remember that very close-up scene that they do in the train station when he's hunting for prey to rob. His eyes are very, very like a predator's eyes, okay? Also kind of cruel, animalistic, indifferent to human suffering. But at the end, he's weeping, he's crying. So the focus again is on his eyes, but this time indicating something completely different, you know, sorrow, regret. He feels bad he's done something wrong, but he's also doesn't want to maybe give up the child because he feels a connection, an emotional connection to the child. All these things indicate that he is now a completely different person to the one we first met at the beginning of the film. He's also in a position of complete surrender. So again, when he hands the baby over to John, you'll notice that in the camera, in that shot, John is bigger than he is, and he's more imposing, physically imposing. So Tsotsi's actually kind of shrunk down physically, and he's become the weaker figure all of a sudden. He's kind of surrendered all of his machismo and his power, his physical strength, and he's become like a child again. And there's a lot of thematic stuff around children in the film, not just the kidnapping of the baby thing, but also Tsotsi flashing back to when he was a child, the street children we spoke about earlier. And it's as though through the course of the movie, not only does Tsotsi become a better person, but he also becomes a child again, you know, somebody who is going back to innocence, right? He's regaining a sense of innocence. He's becoming the child he never really got to be because his life was so brutal. I'm not sure this is appropriate, but I know you do a module maybe in your first year called sociology, and in sociology you do a little bit of the sociology of crime. And you know, one thing sociologists say is that people aren't just born criminals. You know, murderers aren't born murderers, but It's usually a process that happens over a period of time, typically through childhood, where a child is bullied, they become kind of traumatized. The trauma makes them unable to develop properly, so their development is arrested or stunted. They then use that trauma to inflict it on other people, and in inflicting it on other people, themselves become even more brutalized, even more traumatized. They do bad things, and so that badness actually also transfers over to them too. And this is this cycle, this process that happens over time, and it's very brutal. It's very tough. And in order for Tsotsi to become what he became, he must have undergone something like that, something really, really terrible in his life. But by the end of the film, a lot of that stuff seems to be unwinding or almost reversing. So that by the end of the film, the very last shot is this shot where his hands are up in the air. He's in a complete state of supplication. Again, we don't see the movie doesn't end on his face, just like it doesn't start in his face. He's turned around in the beginning. At the end, he's also facing away from the camera, actually. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean, but it's a nice bit of symmetry to say that the way the movie starts and the way the movie ends is with the character looking the same direction. But he's utterly and completely changed around. So there's a symmetry, there's like a balance in the film, but the the balance is now the opposite actually of what it was at the beginning, right? So all of these little choices are just that, they're choices, they're things that create an effect. And I've picked out a number of these things throughout the movie for you to consider, but there's a number of other things I haven't gone over which you can look at too. So I would encourage you to watch the film again, to think about it in these terms, to look at every single scene you can, every camera angle, and understand very well that these are all choices. They're deliberate calculations in order to create a certain effect, using a technique that the director is in firm control of. Remember to use the document that you have, a PDF. I've put it under lecture resources in this learning unit on ARC, and it gives you a rundown and a definition of each and every single kind of cinematographic or visual element that are at the disposable that can be used by a director in the film. It gives you a definition, a name of it, and you've got to use that in your POE when you answer the LU3 question for Tsotsi. Okay, so make sure you are familiar with what those terms are, how to use them, and how to see them in the film, but most importantly, how then they connect thematically to the film, specifically around place. Okay, the module is all about place, so you're always looking throughout the film to see how place is enhanced, used, exaggerated to create, again, a mood, an effect, a theme, a meaning that you can talk about in your POE. All right, and that's the film. We still have 2 more live classes to go. In those, we'll cover the next learning unit 4, which is a novel by Damon Galgut called The Promise. I've put up an ICE task for that already for you to use. It will be due on the 12th of May, because I have to hand the ICE marks in, I think, by the 14th of May. So make sure you have completed those and you can get the 10%. So in the meantime, you've got to read that book. By the time we meet, I think maybe I've read the first 2 sections of it. That'll be about to page 130. And we'll look at the first 130 pages in our first live class on that in the next fortnight. Okay, I will leave it there. Bid you good evening. Hopefully this lecture has helped you. Remember, there's a lot that I didn't say about the film, which you can think about for yourself as you rewatch the movie Tsotsi. Until we meet again, have a good evening and speak to you soon. Cheerio.